how do we follow up with prospects without being quote unquote pushy in that regards? We'll start with David, and then we'll go to Andrew on that one, and then we'll wrap it up of how people can connect with you after this. But how do we follow up without being pushy?
So I always go to the concept of authenticity, and Andrew said an obligation. You know what your prospect or client needs and how to help them. So if you're not reaching out, you're not fulfilling your duty. Again, this is a place where people get really nervous because they've been oversold or aggressively followed or stalked by what I'm just going to call a crappy salesperson who thinks that the way to get business is to call somebody every 3 days or to reach out to them all the time, on email and send them, just blast them. But I think the best way of following up is making sure that any follow-up you have has a purpose, something that, and I think Andrew might have even mentioned this too, the idea of ending every conversation with a clear next step is so important. Now that next step might be, hey, let's do business together, let's get payment, let's get a deposit. Maybe the client or the prospect's not quite ready to move. It could be, hey, it sounds like you got some things to work on. Should we talk in 2 weeks? Should we talk early next year? When is the time that you are going to feel comfortable making a decision? And they say, whenever you say, hey, great, I'm going to put it on my schedule to give you a call on that day. I promise I'll reach out to you. Or even if you can set up if somebody says, we're not going to make that decision until next quarter in 3 months, say, great, let's pull out our calendars. I'm a busy person. I know you are too. I don't want to waste your time. But even if they aren't willing to do that, I always try to say, hey, I promise I'll give you a call. This is just a little tactical thing because then every time I reach out, it's like, I promised that I would talk to you. So, I'm not being obnoxious. I'm just following through on what we agreed to the last time we spoke. So that's kind of a tactical thing that can help. But, following up and being, if you know you can help them and you're trying to help them, that's not being pushy. If they tell you stop calling me and you keep calling them, that's being pushy. So don't do that. But everything else, I think you're okay with.
Yeah, Andrew, what's your take? Go ahead.
I had a friend when I was in college when I really started to understand just how crazy this stuff can be. He's the kind of guy that, he would text women, right? And then all of a sudden they didn't respond in 15 minutes. And so then he would send follow-up text messages, and all of a sudden you got 15 text messages. It's like, is this guy a stalker, right? So I kind of really got that at an early age. Like, there's something there with, having a presence or an image that you don't need other people. And you really want to put yourself in a position where you don't need other people so you're not incessantly following up. That being said, if you have not talked to someone on the phone, everyone in here, no one's going to go to your website and click a button and decide to work with you. You have to talk to them on the phone. So if you have to talk to them on the phone, there's kind of 2 categories to answer this question. First one is people that I have not yet talked to on the phone. I think it is fair to follow up with those people 2 to 3 times. Whether or not they've inquired with you or you're reaching out to them, totally reasonable. That's just a reasonable number of times. People get 145 emails a day on average right now. So things get lost. So following up a few times is totally reasonable, and you do want to have a process in place to do that. Now, if someone has talked to you on the phone and they did not pay in full, do a deposit, or book a follow-up meeting on the calendar, you ignore them. And you never, ever try to follow up with them again. If they want to come back, that's totally fine. But, I think I've talked with 800 accountants this year, 8 accounting firms this year. I've worked with over 200. And what we found in all of the data is that if you talk to a brand new person that you've never talked to before, 20% of those people will decide to work with you. But if you look at people that you've talked to that are coming back that you're like trying to follow up with, only 5% of those people decide to work with you. So there's literally no reason to spend your time focused on the people you've already talked to that didn't decide to move forward. And to be honest, that's a very good representation of how they're going to be as a client. So if they're giving you the runaround now, imagine what it's going to be like having to actually work with them for a year. So you want people that hear about you, decide to reach out, have a conversation, decide to get signed up immediately. Those really are the best clients because that's exactly how they're going to act as an actual client. So that's the biggest thing is when they're prospects that you haven't talked to, do a little bit of follow-up. But after the call, if they won't agree to payment, deposit, or a follow-up meeting, and it doesn't matter how much they try to sell you that they're still interested, action counts way more than words. Just completely ignore them. And if they want to come back, that's totally great. But there's really no reason to spend your time there. It's just inefficient.